Good morning. So today I would like to talk about faith and courage in the face of opposition or hardship from elders of Jehovah's Witnesses. And to do that, I'm going to start off in John chapter 9. Now I've already looked at this because it's the miracle of the blind man that Jesus cured. But we'll look at a different aspect of it. But first we'll go to John chapter 10, where the Jews were arguing amongst each other about whether Jesus was the Christ or not. So in verse 25 of chapter 10, Jesus says this: I've told you that obviously that he is the Christ or the Messiah, but you do not believe. The works I do in my Father's name are my witness. So the miracles that he performed were obviously evidence that Jesus came from God. However, there was also his way of teaching. The wisdom that Jesus had has to come from God. It's common sense, but it's just not very common. And the way that Jesus taught us to live works, and it is the best way of life. However, down in verse 37, Jesus said this: if I am not doing my Father's work, there is no need to believe in me. But if I am doing it, then even if you refuse to believe in me, at least believe in the work that I do. So this is why the miracles are so important to us, because they can help us to develop faith, strong faith, that Jesus is the Messiah, and this will give us courage in the face of all sorts of adversity. So maybe if you're daydreaming sometime, maybe you're thinking that you're rowing a boat on the lake and then Jesus walks past you on the water, how would you feel? Or if most of us have illness of some sort, how are we going to feel when Jesus cures us, which he surely will do? So let's have a look at one of Jesus' works in particular, and that's when he cured the blind man in John chapter 9. Now this poor man had been blind from birth, and now he is of age. He has to work for himself, so all he can do is beg. But he's not only faced with his disability, but he is also faced with prejudice. Because the belief at the time was that if you were disabled, it was because you had sinned badly. And even the disciples believed this. So they said to Jesus, well, which ones sinned? Was it the parents or the man? Jesus didn't answer them directly, but he answered by example. He had no prejudice against this man and cured his blindness. Now all sorts of arguments arose because he did it on the Sabbath. So the scribes and Pharisees come along and cause such trouble, they call the parents. And they want to know, is this your son? Which of course it is. But they are afraid of the Jews. They're afraid of being thrown out of the synagogue, which means that they wouldn't be able to trade and they wouldn't have any income. Now the son wasn't afraid. He'd learnt to deal with adversity as a blind man and facing prejudice. So when the scribes and Pharisees argued with him, he was able to give a courageous answer. They asked him, what do you think? Who is this man? Now the once blind man said, well, he has to be a prophet, and he may have been thinking of Elijah and Elisha back in the book of Kings. And these were able to perform miracles because they were prophets of God. And that's the only way they could do these miracles. So Jesus had to be a prophet. Well, the scribes and Pharisees get angry with him, and they say, are you trying to teach us? We believe in Moses, but we don't know where this man has come from. Well, the once blind man, beg your pardon, is astonished at this. He says he has to be a prophet. Well, they get angry with him and they throw him out. which is what elders do when they can't cope with you bringing something to their attention. So, did this man have a lot to fear? Well, yes, because if he was thrown out, then he's in trouble. He's got no income. But Jesus recognizes what has happened and comes along to help him, explains to him that Jesus is the Messiah, that he can have faith in him, and I believe that this blind man would then follow Jesus and be protected. But this leads Jesus then to talk about himself being the good shepherd and contrasting it with the hired shepherds who are only thinking of their own well-being and are not concerned for the sheep. So he says, the sheep hear his voice, that's Jesus as the shepherd. So how do we hear the voice of Jesus? Well, we read the scriptures for ourselves. The reason being that Jesus said in chapter 10 and verse 3, one by one he calls his own sheep. So individually, we each need to recognize the voice of the shepherd. If we read the scriptures and make it part of ourselves, we will recognize Jesus' voice. But also, as it says in verse 5, we will not follow a stranger. We will run away from the stranger. We don't recognize the voice of the strangers. Their voices will sound off to us, such as Watchtower's secret rules and their secret ways of doing things. It sounds wrong. Why? Because we're used to the openness of what Jesus did. We're used to Jesus' voice. We will not be misled by false shepherds or ones like the scribes and Pharisees who were only out looking for themselves. So we can take a lot of comfort from this. We can build up our faith by reading about the miracles, looking forward to these miracles being performed in our own cases when the kingdom comes, having courage to stick up for what Jesus said and not worry about what elders or other religious people might say about us. We will stick to the voice of the shepherd. So you might like to read through chapters 9 and 10 of John. They are wonderful, wonderful things to read. And we're so grateful to God that Jesus has given us these wonderful teachings that can keep us safe in these last days. Thank you for watching.